Hello. Hopefully you can hear me now. Hi. Thanks for coming along, and thanks very much to Rod and Simon for giving me the opportunity to read with the holding cell again. The last time I was here, I read stuff that had been published since my collection. So I decided today something different. I'll back to the collection and I'll read some poems that I don't read all that often from the collection. So I'm going to start with two very short poems that are inspired by memories of my mother. Radio. The radio sits on the chair where you left it 2 years ago while tidying the shelf. And in that time, it has filled the gaps in my crocheted life, scored the silence with blisters of sound, and without raising its voice, pinpricked my memory with the song that was playing as you left. Lunchbox. Cycling to school on cracked pathways, I am buoyed by the thought of a donut stashed behind salad leaves in the lunchbox you bought at your first Tupperware party. The choice had been between this and a set of containers in watery blue, too small to carry anything of substance, but remarkably clever, as though designed by an intern on block release from Toy Town, like me, still grappling with perspective and laced shoes. Growing up in Glasnevin, there was a big field behind our house, which subsequently sold for housing and became an estate called Violet Hill. But it would have been a place where we would have spent a lot of time. But there was always a sort of a dark menace to it. Truth or dare. It was the last day of summer, and the grass in the back field was too high for football, so you suggested hide and seek. As I counted down, I sneaked a glimpse of you slipping through the hedge. But when I followed, there was no sound, no broken twigs to guide my way, and the ditch had stolen your scent. At every turn, I expected your muffled laugh, splitting into a scream. Instead, the white noise of crickets rubbed the silence. I called your name. It bounced back unanswered. Trees mumbled words I couldn't hear, and the overgrown path hurried into a clearing where a man in a wedding suit, elegant but frayed, stepped from the shadows, spoke my name with stark aplomb, offered a black umbrella just as a scarf of rain whipped through, and spoiled our game when he revealed bare legs pushing through the undergrowth. The next poem was came to me. I was looking at the tree in Annaghmakerrig, actually, looking at the trees over the lake, and it reminded me of a famous painting by René Magritte. 16th of September, after René Magritte. The oak tree marks the midpoint of my run. There and back, a collector and dispenser of breath. Branches clustered like alveoli against the autumn grey. The relief of tagging, turning, and not looking back. I never witnessed the leaves parting to reveal a nascent moon. This mere sliver of a thing, cradled and fattened with light, later to be craned into a meaningless sky. The first line of this next poem came from something my father said to me in the 60s when we started to see the first kind of self-service and supermarket shops, and he just didn't trust them. So it's really the poem became a poem about suburban anxiety. The man in number 41 lives in the fear of self-service shops, checks his pockets as he leaves for contraband and unwanted gifts, planted in the crush at the salad counter. Is suspicious of umbrellas since he read of the Bulgarian spy stabbed in the knee on Westminster Bridge. Or was it the cathedral of the same name? No matter. He knows it could happen to anyone at any time. Loves the oily innocence of fairgrounds, the beards of candy floss, the sawn-off option at the rifle range, but is afraid he might find himself rocking at the top of a Ferris wheel, waiting for others to board, only to remember he had left the iron plugged in, candles burning, and knowing that the neighbour 2 doors down, the only one with a key, would be caught up in the vortex of his daughter's ballet. Phone snapped silent. He would call his home number, be reassured to hear it ring, surprised when it answered, his own voice coughing down the line. And 3 years ago, we lost a beautiful dog, Harvey. He was a blue roan cocker spaniel. So this poem was inspired by him walking the dog after Harvey. I knew he wanted a walk when he brought in his lead, pointed at the watch on my wrist, and started to bark. He wasn't particularly choosy which route we took once we passed the bejazzled poodle in number 14. They had history, not all of it good. And even now she rebuffed his advances, sitting inside the gate, checking her nails and preening her latest coiffure. The park, a treasure trove of loose dogs, was likely to offer more success. And here he could afford to be picky, turning up his nose at mongrels and bull terriers, finding a Shih Tzu pretty but superficial, and setting his heart on a cocker spaniel, come-to-bed eyes and floppy ears. Coy at first, the barriers quickly dropped, and what passed between them was both romantic and breathless. I'm not even sure if he caught her name, although when we went home, he scribbled something on the wall above the bed, then settled into a chair, happy to have the rest of the day to himself. This next poem is a poem of Enric, The Shoes. Even though we talked for hours, I never caught your name. You left nothing but a phone number scribbled on the back. Cobbler on Peter Street said they had been expecting a call. Your shoes are ready, beautifully cosseted in scarlet silk. I tried them on, a little tight and not my style. Name on the docket, tantalizing yet impossible to read. To break them in, I wore them home, toes squeaking. When I took them off, they tried to escape, tiptoeing barefoot down the stairs. Caught them as they slipped the latch, nailed them to the floor, and fell asleep. I dreamt of you in mask and stripy top. When I woke, the shoes were gone. A note in a familiar hand, flutter of heel prints on my wooden floors. As luck would have it, a grainy photo, their side profile posed reluctantly in an upstairs room. For weeks, I scoured the neighborhood. Posters and handbills, no shoe unturned. Lost, never worn, one careful owner. Nothing but leopard prints and patent leather, until tonight. They turned up on my step and explained how they had walked out when they found another shoebox under your bed. A poem about the origins of evil, the single twin. They would say you were born with squabbling eyes, and when you stared, even your mother looked away. A swarm of black hair pasted to your head like a damp rose petal. Fingers already finding opposition knotted in the jailed shadow of your cot. You could knit when you were 3, a perfect cable. Each dropped stitch silently recovered, as needles, longer than your arms, coaxed a scarf from noodles of wool. Later, a balaclava to frame your eyes, one blue, one grey. This is a poem I wrote about at the time of the refugee crisis, and it's really about the circularity of the journey that they take. Aleppo is burning. We rise early, pack rucksacks with the skeletons of our lives, store sleep for later, and fold in with the crowd. A peloton swarming for the border, unprepared for the broken mirrors of angry faces, 3-card tricks, and the suspended animation of a new limbo, a bald patch between tufts of border posts, where names and nationalities are easily displaced, and our hearts are overtaken by the rhythm of battered coaches idling on the other side of the fence. They will carry us blindfolded through the sticky nights, lips moistened by cheap perfume, to a port with shuttered windows and a boatman peddling porous promises of freedom. The freedom that allows us to circle the compound as often as we like, play football on the beach, and when the sky darkens to cobalt blue, watch the tempting lights of boats in the channel, pinch the coast of England between our fingers, and stand for hours in the mizzle and mud, tight knots of silent conversation. For we have forgotten the formula for sleep, and know that even when we rise, Calais will still be burning. This is a poem inspired by painting by the Spanish artist Murillo. 2 women at a window. Their eyes betray nothing of what might have gone before. Were they caught in a catfight over a dress, borrowed but never returned? Or a letter steamed open and hastily resealed? News that could not be unseen, the final link in a chain of stolen glances, whispered words, and footsteps quickening on the wooden stairs. Or have they lost the morning to impatience and panic, the constant cling of call bells, and their paths crossing like ghosts in voiceless corridors? Either way, they will slip back into their lives. The feelings they had shelved will return, and we will never know what words were spoken in the half-eaten silence. This is a poem inspired on I was walking by the Royal Canal, watching some swans. It's called Forbidden Swan. I've never seen a swan smoking after sex, but suspect they do. How else can we explain the nervous pacing on the towpath, wings touching hidden pockets to check for matches, or the slow draft of air to mask a throaty cough? So maybe, after fumbled in the privacy of a hotel room, webbed feet snared on carpet pile, the cob lights up, pads to an open window, tips a wing and looks back to see a crumpled napkin. This is a poem I bought. I think it was in about 1985, probably. I saw this beautiful jumper in the window of Ecru, which was a kind of a stylish boutique at the time, and I saved up to buy it. and I still have it, I think, actually. So I've had it for over 30 years, and so this is really inspired by that jumper, the Constellations of Wool. I can still remember how I felt when I saw you in the window of Ecru, a chunky knit in red and green, and now my companion for 30 years. Parties and nightclubs, hill walks and DIY. You have stood by me, never objecting to being dragged out at short notice, and never one to disclose the secrets we shared. Even when lately friends expressed surprise at a rare appearance, and I interjected, tugging self-consciously at a sleeve, that you had shrunk and were no longer fit for purpose. You have always been happy with a prime position in the second drawer, there to be the willing bedfellow of other styles and colours passing through, and never a blemish, save for the pulled stitch under the arm, nicked on barbed wire up at Crone Wood. But as I grow older, I worry, who will look after you when I'm gone? And will you mind going out alone after dark? So I just one poem to go, and I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to thank Roz and Simon for the opportunity again. I'd also like to encourage you. There's going to be poets reading on the Holding Cell on the hour right up to 10 o'clock. So enjoy the rest of Poetry Day. And this is a poem I wrote. My dad died in 1971, and he'd been sick for a couple of years probably before that, and I was still very young, quite young, early teens, I suppose. And the World Cup in 1970 was actually held in Mexico, for those of you who can remember back that. And the matches were, because of time difference, the matches were strange times. So the television had been moved at this stage to my father's bedroom, and I was allowed to stay up late one night to watch a match. So this is Mexico, 1970. Guadalajara, 1 a.m. England play Romania. I'm curled like a dormouse in the lee of the bed. Light from the Telefunken plays shadows on my father's face. The blue smile when Hurst scores, the usher's torch, and a cough replayed for 40 years. Thank you very much.